Hi guys, my name is Leo. I have been a founder for a couple of years now, first in Web2, now in Web3 and crypto. I've been in the space for about 2 years, crypto. Have two companies, one blockchain protocol, one fashion NFT marketplace, and I also advise a crypto family office and the Metaverse Fashion Council. So all things NFTs and Metaverse is kind of like my ballpark. And I've actually heard Holger talk about I think a metaverse that you guys are building or something around that area just now, so it might be interesting for you guys to hear more about the metaverse just now. I'm gonna move up here if that's fine, yeah? That's nice. I feel like a professor now. That's cool. So yeah, I'm gonna be talking about metaverse interoperability and advanced NFT usability. Here's a little bit of the agenda. With regards to the time, I'd say we just jump right into it. For a little bit of grounding, real quick, how many of you guys have been in any metaverse thus far? Hands up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's more than usual. How many guys own NFTs in wallets? That's surprisingly few. So some of you guys have been in the metaverse, but you don't own NFTs? How does that work? Which metaverse did you visit without like blockchain integration or any kind of wallets?
More the free ones, just we tested with the company to have a look into metaverse, meeting there and so on. So more the free stuff.
Oh, as in like virtual environments.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. That's actually, that brings me to a definition right from the batch. When we in the crypto space talk about metaverse, we usually talk about open environments, generally built on decentralized infrastructure, one or another blockchain, with some kind of embedded tokenomics and value participation systems for all people to be able to, develop their kind of experience or contribute to the overall, usually DAO, sometimes just regular ecosystem. Oftentimes people confuse virtual environments that are purely like, I don't know, B2B learning experiences in VR with an open and decentral metaverse, which is what I'm going to refer to when I'm giving this presentation. So also for kind of like grounding purposes, the metaverse is often advertised in the media as, this one place where everyone's going to get together, and, Zuckerberg's always saying, oh, there's going to be this one huge thing. Unfortunately, it's not that simple, and this is what I'm going to jump into a little bit in my presentation, because all of the different companies are building on different infrastructures, different tech, and different 3D engines, meaning that in the future, most likely, we're going to have like a multitude of virtual environments, some for certain purposes like, online business, some for purely gaming purposes, and it's going to be a gigantic mix of different worlds. Huge unicorns and global players are working on different engines and environments, so it's very much likely that in 20 to 30 years from now on we'll see a variety of different worlds. But the one thing that they all share is actually the initial setup and kind of purpose definition of every individual player, which brings me to my next slide. Most of the metaverses have some kind of avatar or character set up initially, and for those who don't know, that's why I was defining the metaverse before. They're usually built on top of different blockchains and NFTs as virtual assets for people to be able to utilize different looks and be able to style themselves. What I have here is an example from Decentraland. It's one of the, I'd say, biggest metaverses in the Western world. And here they have a kind of like base layout of virtual assets that they can choose from. And then anyone can participate in bringing NFTs into this environment and into this ecosystem for people to have access to. So this is, for example, because we're talking about business use cases, one business use case for actual blockchain technology where, the people in the front, they don't really care whether it's built on Cardano, IOTA, Ethereum, or Polygon. At the end of the day, they want a cool outfit and they want to purchase for something that they can put on their avatar. Yeah, this is my favorite slide personally, because what I'm trying to say here is that you see the metaverse as we see it in the crypto space and amongst the Web3 degens, think it's going to be a hyper-personalizable space with everyone being able to contribute and build crazy things up to their wildest imagine. Like, I don't know, riding one of the Snoop Dogg sandbox avatars on top of like a zebra wearing the Artifact sneakers. For those of you that don't know, Artifacts was the first sneaker company, was bought by Nike as the first virtual NFT wearable company for an undisclosed sum, but definitely in like the 9 digits, which is another, display of how much money there can already be made in virtual assets and kind of like in wearable use cases for environments in Web3. And also we believe that in the future, branded kind of assets from existing companies or individual 3D designers will be able to go into the metaverse to be applicable. The big issue, however, that all of these NFTs and all of these different virtual assets have, the big difficulty is that they are individualized for all of the metaverses. And if you look back at what I said initially, there's going to be a bunch of different metaverses, and every metaverse will have their kind of experience, environment, and assets, making all of them not interoperable. And this brings me to the next slide. A super tiny bit of self-advertisement so that you have an idea of what we do. So one of the companies I founded is Star Protocol. Is basically an interoperability blockchain that connects all of these different worlds on the chains, as well as in 3D environments, to make assets utilizable across all of them, so that you can actually have a, I'd say, kind of like a holistic experience of your avatar and your assets. So this is one of the interoperability use cases that, for example, we work on in the metaverse, but there's lots more. How we do this is actually relatively simple. We have a 2-layer infrastructure. One is purely technical, where we connect with APIs and SDKs to different metaverses in order for them to be able to push and fetch assets amongst each other. It's hosted on a decentralized infrastructure, IPFS. For those of you that are not familiar with IPFS, it's interplanetary file storage system built on Filecoin. And then we have a DAO to kind of structurize the process and the future development of the protocol, because it's 100% decentralized, running on a protocol's unique utility token. You guys familiar with the DAO? Everyone's familiar with the concept of a DAO, right? Okay, cool, I see nods. It's a decentralized autonomous organization for those who don't dare to ask. Next slide. So why do we do this, and why do I think that this is important, or we think this is important? This brings me to a little bit more of a sociological kind of like outlook on the metaverse, and maybe some inspiration for you guys to take home with regards to what business cases there are. We are now at the very kind of like ground level of building future infrastructure and building the future metaverses. And it's really important that we build something that's better than the web versions we've had before, like Web 1, Web 2. You're familiar with the culture behind Web 3. And it's very crucial, in our opinion, that amongst all these amazing things that are being built from different blockchain companies such as IOTA, infrastructure, protocols, etc., that there's some kind of common denominator for people to be able to freely move their identity across different spaces. Because if we don't do that, we end up with something very similar to Web 2, where you have a bunch of decentralized yet capsulated centralized ecosystem, where there's a certain group of people in power of decision making, and there's a lot of barrier creation, and we think that this is not kind of the future that we want to see for Web3, and it's also going against all of the decentralized ideas of the actual blockchain initiators such as Bitcoin and Ethereum. So this is one of the reasons why we build what we do, what we've done. In order for people to be truly able to immerse themselves in the different worlds and have complete freedom of identity and belonging. How much more time do I have?
15 minutes, 10 minutes left.
Okay, then we'll have some room for questions, that's great. Or you can move to the next speaker. Why is this so important, identity, without going too much into kind of a philosophical stage? It's just something that we have to think about very initially when building all of these virtual environments, because this is just some random thoughts for you guys. There's a lot of bad things that can potentially happen if we don't. For example, what if only a certain group of people has access to, let's say, one avatar with a certain skin color, or one avatar with a certain asset? Then we could potentially face the threat of discrimination in future virtual environments that we build. And it sounds super stupid saying, oh, you know, some people have the green aliens and over here we have, like, I don't know, the red unicorns, and they're going to be fighting against each other. But for those of you who have seen the movie Ready Player One, this is a very realistic scenario. And I mean, if we as humans have trouble, seeing over race and ethnicity in real life, obviously we're going to have the same issues in the virtual space. So this is something that you have to think about when building all of these worlds and making things accessible for everyone. Same as kind of like location-wise. What I see sometimes in metaverse development is that only very initially the whole pieces of land in a metaverse are available to anyone. But as soon as you have like a fixed amount of people with a certain access to a Discord community or owning an NFT, only these people get access to these plots of land. Now I understand the FOMO building aspects and everything behind it, but I think it goes a little bit against the crucial foundations of what we try to build in Web3 with decentralization and access for anyone to anything, whether it's a piece of land, whether it's a building, or whether it's a virtual wearable and an asset. So this is just something to think about for you guys. And I think with that, I'll end my talk on the next slide. Thank you. And just for shits and giggles, this is kind of one of the, this is actually a different company, but this is a virtual environment that we've built in Decentraland, which is also what I showed you initially, where people have the avatar set up. So there you can see kind of like how people individualize their avatars to some kind of crazy extents, right? Like this person here with the fire glasses and the teddy bear look, or this woman, being relatively exposed. Who knows who's behind that? Who are we to care? But this is who they identify as in the virtual worlds, and they should be able to move this virtualization of themselves anywhere where they want. So this is kind of one of the blockchain metaverse use cases. Thank you. If there's questions, feel free to shoot. Otherwise, we can continue. Yes, sir.
Just a question from like a business perspective. So I think it's an interesting concept that you try to develop an interoperability between the stuff you can wear in the metaverse. But what is, I mean, I've never been in any kind of metaverse, but I'm just thinking, how much money, first of all, or how much cost you have to calculate if I want to buy a certain, let's say, T-shirt in one metaverse, and how much money I also have to plan for actually getting this interoperability service from you. So is there any kind, I mean, I guess there's nobody else, or like maybe a couple of companies who are thinking about this right now, and I think it's a quite solid vision, but can you go a little bit through the pricing and what you think about that?
Sure. So maybe for your information or for everyone's information, initially, it varies drastically. Like you can get this hat, for example, we had for an event in Decentraland, and we just made it available for free for people to wear. And then we've also had, collaborations with brands and designers where we sold assets for 4 digits, and that's not even, very high of what's possible. We've seen Dolce & Gabbana have a virtual metaverse drop a couple of months ago where they sold assets, I think, for $6.8 million, and it was just like a collection of 4 or 5 pieces, which is pretty insane. And then the artifact sneakers, as I showed you guys before, these virtual sneakers, they're also traded, between 10 to 50 ETH, which is, 5 or 6 digits at any given point in time. So there is crazy money involved in individual assets if they have high exclusivity attributed to them. However, there's also on multiple metaverses that we see, and we work with over 10 metaverses by now, a huge quantity of general assets that people kind of have access to for less money, meaning $10 to $50. And when it comes to the bridging and kind of like the interoperability, we built the pricing of the interoperability of an individual asset can actually be set in the smart contract by the people that are staking their asset to be bridged. So we actually allow the community to decide how expensive the distribution of the assets will be. So forming kind of an own economic kind of like exchange on that level. if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And any economics on the actual interoperability service? Like, do you have already some kind of a subscription model or anything? What you would charge the people who would like to wear the Dolce & Gabbana hat in a different metaverse?
So we only charge them, or well, we don't charge them as an entity because the entity itself, it doesn't even exist. It's kind of like when using the protocol, there's fees attributed at different steps, and a small sum of this of these fees within the ecosystem flows back into reimbursing all participants, basically creating an incentivation model on all levels. Yeah, I think that's enough for this realm. But if you're really interested, I can I don't know, send you the pitch deck or something, or you can read our white paper. It's on the website.
Okay. Just wondering how you make, or how this transfer is happening when I'm going to Decentraland and I have their t-shirt, for example, and I want to use it in the sandbox, I'm using your service. Is it then a copy?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I maybe bought it in Decentraland or the marketplace there, and then are you creating a copy at the sandbox?
It depends on where the asset stems from originally. So if you have an
Different blockchain technologies.
Yeah, if you have just with this example, if you have an asset that you purchase within Sandbox, you're basically staking this asset to our protocol, and we attribute it to the decentralized file storage as the source file, making you the owner, and then we create carbon copies or derivatives, as we call them, on different chains, making it then interoperable with other blockchains that the metaverses are built upon. And the cool thing about this is that we can actually put a timestamp on the assets, making it possible for you to also rent them out or sub-license them. So you can say, I don't know, you have a super rare Gucci Sandbox jacket, and you can stake it, and you can say, I really only want this for Decentraland myself once, or I want it for Fortnite, but I also want to quantify it like times 100 to make it available for other people to purchase forever, or to rent it out for a fixed period of time.
But it's bound to your service, the original one is bound to your service, and if I want to free it up, I have to remove all the other copies, I would say, then in the other metaverses, and get it then back.
Yeah, that's a very good question. You can decide. So you can either say, as soon as you unstake your NFT, all of the others will also perish. However, this is going to diminish the value of the NFT by a lot, because the people are not going to be able to know whether they will be able to have it forever. Or you can say you basically allow the licensing process, but only soft stake, and can remove it at any time. But the derivatives that you've pushed into the ecosystem can stay for a fixed period of time or for a lifetime. So again, we allow the people to kind of have the decision power over that, which will also result in different economic outcomes for all of them.
That's another question, like when an asset exists in different metaverses, there has to be different 3D models for the assets for each different metaverse, of course.
Yep.
So do you help with making those, or does the artist, the original creator, have to create one and make sure it exists in each different style of the metaverse, or what is your part in that?
Also a very good question. So this is kind of what I talked about earlier, what I went through very rapidly. We have this on a kind of like 2-layer. We have a little bit of optimization on the technical side with connecting to the different metaverses and being able to push and pull assets, or fetch and push, as they say. And then we also have an individualization concept where members of our DAO can create assets, or also personalize assets to a further extent. And then these tailors, as we call them within the ecosystem, are rewarded for their services with the ecosystem token, and participate in the sales of the staked assets.
I have another question, quick question, just out of curiosity. Are there any like trademark protection authorities or services within these metaverse? Because at the end of the day, it's open source, right? Everybody can just like set up a Nike shirt, and nobody would care about. I mean, is this? I guess you would know because you're in this field, right?
One would think, yeah. Yeah, there's great questions. So I personally think IP is dead. We're going into a decade or century where everyone's kind of like copying everyone, and the only thing that makes IP very valuable is the actual brand that you have. But I feel like in the future, all kinds of tries to like save this will not work. And now lawyers would hate me for saying this, but this is my personal opinion. Because I mean, you see it in the physical market of assets as well, right? There's so many like Louis Vuitton and Gucci assets out there, like physical pieces, and you know, half of the people wearing Louis Vuitton on Kudam, I don't think are actually wearing proper Louis Vuitton, but yeah, here we are. And I think we're going to see the same thing in virtual environments. The way we kind of deal with the issue is by putting the responsibility of whether the NFT that you stake or not stake is an original into the hands of the owner, making them also, you know, kind of liable for it. It's kind of like on eBay, if you say, I put a bag from, I don't know, or let's say I put an old Volkswagen car on this, and I say this is kind of the qualities of the car, you're the person making the statement, and then you're to be held reliable for whether that's true or not. And I think this is kind of the outcome that we'll see with most of the decentral Web3 services. And whether that, you know, turns out to be trackable or not is going to be very interesting to see, because also potentially a lot of the people in the blockchain world are anonymous because you don't necessarily have IP addresses or information. So I guess it'll be an interesting field for, you know, lawyers to make a lot of money.